Britain, land of tea, crumpets, and atheism? It seems like a strange brew, but recent trends suggest a shift in the spiritual landscape. More and more Brits are turning away from organized religion. Could it be that the old ways just aren't cutting it anymore? Some experts believe so. They point to a curious phenomenon: spiritual boredom. Imagine sitting through a dull sermon, feeling your mind wander. That's spiritual boredom in action, and it might be turning people off religion altogether. It's a fascinating idea, isn't it? We live in a world of instant gratification, where entertainment is just a click away. Perhaps the slow, contemplative nature of traditional spirituality just doesn't hold the same appeal. But before we declare Britain the new atheist capital of the world, let's dig a little deeper. Spiritual boredom might sound like something your nan complains about, but it's a real thing. Scientists describe it as a lack of engagement with spiritual practices. It's that feeling of restlessness, that urge to check your phone in the middle of prayer. And it turns out spiritual boredom has real consequences. When we're bored, we're less likely to pay attention. Our minds wander, and we miss out on the potential benefits of the experience. In a spiritual context, this means we're less likely to connect with something larger than ourselves. Think about it. If you're constantly checking the clock during meditation, you're not exactly achieving inner peace, are you? And if a religious service feels like a chore, you're probably not absorbing the message. But what makes some spiritual practices more engaging than others? And why are so many people finding traditional religion, well, boring? To get to the bottom of spiritual boredom, researchers at the University of Vienna decided to ask people about their experiences. They wanted to understand why some spiritual practices felt fulfilling, while others seemed to drag on, leaving participants feeling disengaged and uninterested. They surveyed over 1,200 adults about a range of spiritual practices, from yoga and meditation to attending religious services. The results were intriguing and shed light on the nuances of spiritual engagement. It turned out that some practices were more likely to induce boredom than others. This discovery was pivotal in understanding how different activities impact our spiritual well-being. Meditation, for example, was seen as relatively engaging, while attending religious services was rated as highly boredom-inducing. Why the difference? The researchers delved deeper into the reasons behind these varying levels of engagement. Well, the researchers suggest that activities that involve active participation and personal reflection are less likely to lead to boredom. When individuals are actively involved, they are more likely to feel a sense of connection and purpose. Meditation, for instance, requires focus and mental discipline, while attending a service can often feel passive and impersonal. This difference in engagement levels can significantly affect how fulfilling the practice feels. But it wasn't just the type of practice that mattered. The context and environment in which these practices were conducted also played a crucial role. The study also found that people's individual preferences played a role. Personal inclinations and past experiences influenced how engaging or boring a spiritual practice felt. Some people simply find certain practices more engaging than others, regardless of the activity itself. This highlights the importance of personalizing spiritual practices to fit individual needs and preferences, ensuring a more meaningful and enriching experience. Section 4: Pilgrimages versus Sermons, a tale of two experiences. In this section, we delve into the contrasting experiences of two spiritual practices, the dynamic journey of pilgrimages and the more static nature of sermons. The Vienna study offered some fascinating insights into the nature of spiritual boredom. Researchers meticulously analyzed various spiritual activities to understand what keeps us engaged and what leaves us feeling disconnected. It seems that activities involving active participation and personal reflection are less likely to leave us reaching for our phones. Take pilgrimages, for example. These journeys are not just physical, but also deeply spiritual, offering a chance for introspection and personal growth. These journeys to sacred sites were rated as the least boring spiritual practice in the study. Pilgrimages often involve traveling to places of historical and spiritual significance, which can be both enlightening and transformative. And it's not hard to see why. The breathtaking landscapes, the sense of community among fellow travelers, and the profound sense of purpose all contribute to making pilgrimages a deeply engaging experience. Pilgrimages are physically and mentally demanding, requiring dedication and a willingness to step outside one's comfort zone. the challenges faced along the way often lead to a greater sense of accomplishment and spiritual fulfillment. On the other end of the spectrum, we have Catholic sermons, which were ranked as the most boring activity. While sermons are meant to be spiritually enriching, they often lack the interactive and immersive elements that keep us engaged. Now, I'm not here to judge anyone's religious practices, but sitting through a lengthy sermon can be a test of anyone's attention span. The passive nature of listening to a sermon, especially if it's long and monotonous, can make it difficult to stay focused. The contrast between these two practices highlights the importance of engagement in spiritual life. Active participation, whether through physical movement or personal reflection, seems to be key in maintaining our interest and connection. When we're actively involved and personally invested, we're less likely to feel bored and more likely to find meaning and connection. Whether it's the physical journey of a pilgrimage or the mental engagement in a more interactive spiritual practice, the key lies in our level of involvement and personal investment. Sharing experiences and reflections with others can also enhance our spiritual journey. The communal aspect of pilgrimages, where stories and insights are exchanged, adds another layer of depth and connection. Preparation and anticipation play a significant role as well. The act of planning a pilgrimage, setting intentions, and preparing oneself mentally and physically can heighten the overall experience, making it more meaningful and less prone to boredom. Similarly, incorporating interactive elements into sermons or other spiritual practices can make them more engaging. Workshops, group discussions, and interactive sessions can transform a passive experience into an active and enriching one. Ultimately, the key takeaway from the Vienna study is the importance of active engagement and personal reflection in our spiritual practices. By finding ways to be more involved and invested, we can transform even the most mundane activities into meaningful experiences. Section 5. The rise of atheism in numbers. So, is spiritual boredom really driving people away from religion? The statistics paint a compelling picture. In recent decades, the UK has seen a sharp decline in religious affiliation, particularly among young people. Dr. Lois Lee, a researcher at the University of Kent, has studied this trend extensively. Her work shows that Britain is becoming increasingly secular, with fewer people identifying as religious and attending religious services. In fact, some projections suggest that by 2030, less than half of the UK population will identify with any religion. This shift is particularly pronounced among young adults, with those aged 18 to 24 being the least likely age group to believe in God. While there are undoubtedly many factors contributing to this trend, spiritual boredom is likely playing a role. When traditional religious practices fail to engage and inspire, people are more likely to disengage altogether. Section 6. Is boredom the only culprit? Now, before we go blaming all of Britain's spiritual woes on boredom, it's important to acknowledge that there are other factors at play. The rise of secularism, which has been steadily growing over the past few decades, has had a profound impact on the way people view religion and spirituality. The decline of traditional social structures, such as the nuclear family and close-knit communities, has also played a significant role. These structures once provided a strong foundation for religious practice and community involvement. Additionally, the increasing availability of alternative spiritualities, such as yoga, meditation, and nature-based practices, offers people new ways to explore their spirituality outside the confines of organized religion. These practices often emphasize personal growth and self-discovery, which can be very appealing in today's fast-paced world. The internet, in particular, has played a significant role in this transformation. With the advent of the digital age, people now have access to a vast array of information and resources that were previously unavailable. With a wealth of information and spiritual resources available at our fingertips, people are no longer limited to the beliefs and practices of their local community. They can explore different religions, philosophies, and spiritual practices from around the world, all from the comfort of their own home. Moreover, the increasing acceptance of atheism and agnosticism has made it easier for people to express their lack of belief without fear of stigma or social isolation. This shift in societal attitudes has allowed for a more open and honest dialogue about faith and spirituality. In the past, declaring oneself an atheist was often met with suspicion or even hostility. People who questioned or rejected traditional religious beliefs were often marginalized or ostracized. Today, it's becoming increasingly commonplace. More and more people are feeling comfortable sharing their beliefs or lack thereof without fear of judgment. This has led to a more diverse and inclusive spiritual landscape. So, while spiritual boredom may be a factor in Britain's drift away from religion, it's certainly not the only one. The changing social, cultural, and technological landscape has created a complex and multifaceted environment in which people are exploring new ways to connect with their spirituality. The spiritual landscape is complex and multifaceted, shaped by a confluence of social, cultural, and technological forces. As we move forward, it will be interesting to see how these factors continue to evolve and influence the way people experience and express their